But again, why is it important? Well, a graph is a visual representation of your data, and to use a term from that's been used widely, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So really, sometimes you can see in a graph something that you can't really just see in the data itself. But it's not separate from your data; it's a representation of your data. And what do you need to know? You need to know which graph basically to use. Based on the different types, what you're trying to do. It kind of it depends on the variables and the type of variables that you're using. So some common ones, bar graphs, and I have two examples here. The bar graph on the left is actually a bar graph of a continuous variable, systolic blood pressure, and it's looking at the mean systolic blood pressures across different regions of the country. And this is kind of dummy data, so don't go, oh my gosh, what's going on, in this particular region. And then on the right is frequency data, so it's counts. So you can use a bar graph in both ways, and they're kind of units in time, basically. You can use pie charts, and pie charts obviously are slices. So again, you can look at, budget factors, you can look at, different, but what you're doing is you're looking at categorical variables here. Okay, so you're typically looking at the counts of a categorical variable. You wouldn't use a pie chart to express descriptive statistics like means and standard deviations. It's just not a good way to use that chart. Line graphs are common, especially when you have multiple data points. So in public health, that might be blood pressures or weight or cholesterol over time. In economics, it might be different. It might be interest rates, or in business, it might be your income or different things. So in education, it could be grades over time. So line graphs are used typically for one variable, but expressed over different time units. A box plot or a box and whisker plot can be very useful. I want to spend a little bit of time here on this graph to explain this. So you have the middle box, and you have a line through that middle box. The middle line is the median, okay? The upper line of the box is the 75th percentile, the lower is the 25th percentile. So basically what you see in the box are the middle two quartiles, okay? And then the whisker represents the basically your outliers, your minimum and maximum values above and below that. And then finally we have histograms. Histograms are used for continuous variables. This is an example with age, and it's really designed to see whether you have a bell-shaped curve or not. All right, so now we're going to go to SPSS. And again, this may look very tiny. The purpose of this is not to explain the actual numbers. It's really just to help you understand the process of creating a chart using SPSS. So the way you create a chart is you go to Graphs, and there's really two ways to do it. I actually prefer to use the legacy dialogues, but you can use the chart builder. And then the way this would work is then you basically select what type of chart do you want. So if you want a bar graph, and then you just put in the variables. So I'm putting in here a continuous variable of mean systolic, and I have region of the country, and it's going to give you actually a preview here. But then you do have options over on the right for different chart types. On the bottom too, there's more options here to really get it looking exactly the way you want it to look. I tend not to use this because I find this a little bit more complicated than necessary. So I'm going to cancel out of that and show you how I do these. I typically go to the legacy dialogues, and then I select here. So if I want to do a bar chart, I'll select bar. I'm going to show you just a simple here, okay? And then I have just here, I have it preloaded. So I have here region of the country. This is just a fictitious data set I have of blood pressures. So what you do is you put it in the category axis. We're going to do number of cases here and click OK. And here's my bar chart. Now, if you want this chart to look a little bit different, you can double click on it, and now you have a chart builder, and you can start tweaking how some of these things are going to look. There's a bunch of things you can add to this. And basically the best way to learn this is just simply playing around with your data. Okay, but that's a bar chart. Pretty simple, basic. I don't have a good data set for a line chart, but a line would be virtually the same as a bar. The only difference is instead of the categorical variables, you just have your different points of time. A pie chart, again, it's used for categorical data. So to make a simple pie chart, you just simply click the define slices by, select your category. With all of these, you can go in here and you can put in titles, subtitles, footnotes, again to give more information. And then you click OK, and now we have our pie chart. And again, you can, if you want to call that out, you can add, show data labels. So once you do that, then another dialog box appears, and again, you can tweak, you can change the colors, change the size, all those good things. Next one is the box plot. So, and we're going to do a simple box. In here I have age as a variable and region of the country. And so you can see I have a table here, and so the table can help you with the data. We're looking at counts here again, but with the box or the box and whisker, it's also looking at, like I said, the median and the middle two quartiles. And the way you interpret this basically is you just visually look across, and in this case, all of these are pretty. If you look horizontally going across the chart, there's one right in the middle that's a little bit lower than the others, but for the most part they're pretty much superimposed. If you combine them all into one box, they would look very similar. If you have a significant difference, you're going to see the entire box above or below the other boxes. So this actually would be a visual way to represent, for example, an analysis of variance, looking at more than two groups. The scatter plot. Okay, so there's a couple of different ways you can do this. I just have I have my two blood pressures, baseline and last, and it's going to give you a scatter here. If you have a strong correlation, it's going to look more like a line. If the correlation is lower, it's going to look more like a circle. So that's, and then it can, so you can kind of view a regression analysis and a scatter plot in a kind of a similar way. And then finally, last but not least, is the histogram. So again, I have my systolic blood pressure loaded into the variable. I click OK, and here's my histogram. And I can see that this isn't exactly a bell-shaped curve. There's a, it's maybe skewed a little bit to the left, and I can tweak some things in here if I want to show like the distribution curve here to see how it looks. No actual data is going to look exactly like the bell-shaped curves you see in the textbooks. So, but it's good information to have, especially if you're trying to demonstrate whether you have a normal distribution or not. Okay, so now I'm going to jump to Excel. I have basically the same data set in Excel that I had in SPSS, and there's a couple of different ways to to do graphs. One of the easiest ways, so I just have a, the average here. I have just a small sample, and then you can insert and go to charts and make that a line. And now I have my bar chart. Pretty crude, but what you can do up here then is look at, you can change the format, you can change the design. If you need to, you can change the chart type. To say, okay, I wanted that to be a bar, or I wanted it to be a different type of chart. But what you want to do with Excel, one thing that Excel is nice about it, obviously depends on the version that you have, but you have these legends up here. So you can add elements, you can do quick layouts. Gives you some nice options there. You want a lot of these that are preloaded in. Again, they'll give you a good look without having to do a lot of design or redesign. You always want to make sure you have the correct data selected. So you can select. I always select my data first. I just find that easier. Sometimes they get lost. So you can select insert chart and then go to your data. But I always want to make sure I have the right data as well. Now, to get a little bit more robust on your charts, what I like to do is I like to use, if I have a data set like this, and this is actually a sample of a larger data set here that I have. There's about 5,000 records in this data set. So it would be pretty hard to do this manually. What I like to do is I like to do a pivot chart. So go here, go insert. You can create a pivot table. You can also create a pivot chart here. And then what you would do is you just go over here and you just manipulate the variables here. So again, if I want to find that region, and I want to do it by, and I have here count. If it's a continuous variable, I'm going to go back up to here to my blood pressure readings. Okay, so I have a count, but if I want to change that, click on value settings, and maybe I want to make that the average. I still don't have this filtered by, I need to filter this by something. So anyway, that's how you do a pivot chart. And again, you've got a lot of options here. You've got your analysis, you've got your design elements, and you have your formatting. So like I say, Excel, again, you just have to kind of play around with it to get it right. I'm going to go